Oh, well, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining. For today's discussion on the future of retail, we have with us Michelle Buxton, who's the CEO of Malcom, Tim Smeets, who's the Director of Digital Transformation at Wereldhave, and Dan Gildoni, who is the CEO of Placense. And so today we're going to be talking about looking at retail, looking over the last 6 to 7 months, and then looking at everything that's happened at that time, how that's going to impact the retail industry moving forward, looking at parts of it dealing with technology, looking at parts of it dealing with services and processes as well. And so to get things off, I think there's a question that we have now, and it's really, how do you see the role of technology in retail evolving in the short term, say the next 12 months, and then in the medium term, looking out 12 to 36 months? And for this question, we'll start off with you, Michelle.
Great. Thanks for inviting us here today. Really looking forward to the session. I think everyone has been saying that the pandemic has brought forward a lot of what everyone was expecting to happen over a longer period of time. So I think the same has happened in the digital transformation of retail real estate in the same way. What we have noticed is that maybe 6 or so months ago, regional shopping places were thriving and everyone was happy to get in their car and travel to regional destinations. Town centres were thriving. That obviously, through various lockdowns, has changed. So I think retail is very much now going to be rooted in place, and that place has changed. And that place is much more your local community where people are having to live and work and play and do everything. And as a result, digital transformation and PropTech is having to look at things in a slightly different way. So 6 or so months ago, our clients were looking at sexy bits of tech that can do this and that, and, be forward and cutting edge in terms of the way that they transform their business digitally. Now it's looking much more at the functional aspects of what PropTech can deliver. So, it's looking at how can we reduce our cost and operations? How can we reduce our the way that we manage our spaces? All of that. So PropTech has pivoted much more into functional requirements like hygiene requirements, and secure and COVID secure, and mitigating risk, and how do we do that cost effectively? Because the industry is struggling in terms of liquidity, and PropTech has always been perceived as an expensive addition, but now what we're trying to do is go into these marketplaces and say, we can actually save you money, we can actually provide you a better service, we can bring all your communities together and all your stakeholders together, and we can operate your buildings and your properties much more effectively. Perfect. So that really is a significant change for me from PropTech looking at retail and real estate in much more of a sexy way, in the way that they can create differences of in-store experience to much more functional and operational platform.
Thank you, Michelle. And Tim, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this coming from the retail operator perspective.
Yeah, happy to share, of course, and thanks for having me again. I couldn't agree more with Michelle. What we see as well is that there has been quite a shift in attention moving away from, or let's say less effort and less investments in the area of customer intimacy and more towards operational efficiency. That's what we see as well, and especially during the last couple of months, we've been looking into, let's say, making sure that our visitors in the shopping centers can visit safely and securely, that they feel comfortable, and so on. For us, it's very important, of course, to make sure that we don't see that big of a drop in visitors, which we, of course, do see. But those who are coming, they need to be able to just shop and feel comfortable and relaxed to the extent that we can. And we, as an operator, real estate operator, we need to be able to provide that fun and safe environment and experience. So that's let's say the also what we foresee on the short term. And back to your question, I think on the longer run, this is just part of the building blocks moving forward, and I see much more investments still coming up when possible, of course, in the area of collaboration. I think that's going to be key, right? I mean, all of the retailers currently are suffering tremendously. I think we're going to foresee a big increase in the amount of fire sales as well as bankruptcies. That's my personal expectation. It's going to be really hard. So I foresee, especially with the smaller retailers, a key need to join in on platforms and collaboration. And this is also where technology comes in, right? You have many different smaller retailers who are now making efforts in going online or have made efforts going into online. There's a huge pickup, of course, in online and omnichannel, but you see a big struggle with the smaller retailers as well to make this transition. I think this is really challenging, and on one side an opportunity as well as for the smaller retailers as well as for key players such as ourselves as Wereldhave, in collaboration, of course, with digital service providers such as the organization of Michelle and Dan, of course. Intelligence, knowing who's coming, where from, understanding, let's say, the catchment area, as we call it, right? So better understanding who lives or travels or works in the exact near environment of our centers is going to be absolute key. Getting those insights in and making sure that we share them as well with our tenants to better enable them to do their magic.
Definitely. Thanks, Tim. And Dan, I guess what Tim was just talking about in terms of operators and technology firms collaborating, especially the smaller retail firms, that's something that I think you would have some insights into, given your position with Placense and the data and analytics that you guys provide. Do you want to talk to us about where you see technology evolving within retail?
Sure. So just a few words on what we do. So we exactly do what Tim described and have the ability of understanding in every given point or moment where people come from, where they're going, where they're shopping, and we base it on the sensor that everyone has in their pocket. So we're looking at a very high percentage of the population to create statistical significance. Now, the interesting thing about retail overall is that up to now, it seems that they've been making most of the decisions based on gut feelings, in some cases with surveys or by having a guy standing in a street corner and actually counting the amount of people coming back and forth. But this pandemic created a big change, a big shift in their need to bring data which is accurate, which is almost real time. So data became not just something which is nice to have, but a necessity. So in these times of uncertainty, the need to have data which will allow them to understand what is actually happening on the ground, both on their locations and on their competing locations, became a necessity. So the first thing that will be a major change, it will be a shift in a much more data-driven decision, which will across all departments. So it's from operations, marketing that are very metric-driven anyway, but even all the way to expansion. So we will probably see a shift in the need of also maybe bringing in new people that are more data-driven, people that can actually make decisions more and more based on this data. And the retailers will start looking for more information that is not just around what's happening indoor and just about the customer service or the customer journeys within the indoors, but also having a better understanding based on data on the investments they make, where they expand, where do they start closing down stores, how to which store should start closing first, and how, and of course, additional operation matters that will all be based on data. The last thing I will say is I think that what will happen now is that the physical world will get closer to the methodologies of the online world. So what created the online world so successful is the ability to understand how users are working, understand what users need, and make it easier for them to actually, even if it's clicking a button. So I guess the regular retail in the physical world will start adapting these methodologies, and we'll see the growth of it. Of course, PropTechs will go into enabling this as we move forward.
No, I think that's an interesting point, looking at how retail now has to kind of adopt some of the methodologies from the online world, especially when it comes to meeting the needs of their potential clients and the customers that come through there. And I think that is a nice little segment into our next question, which I'll initially direct toward you, Tim. And this is, you mentioned that now at this time there's a kind of a move away in terms of retail operators from looking at technology to build out kind of an experience of going shopping, more towards looking at it to improve the health and safety of that. And I would think that in some ways the two of those go hand in hand, the experience of shopping and then the health and safety in there. How do you see, do you guys look to merge the two and bring back some elements of an experiential shopping experience within your properties?
Yeah, and it's a very traditional challenge, right? First of all, because you want to balance, let's say, the efforts towards customer intimacy as well as operational efficiency. I mean, there's been books about this for many, many ages already, and it's a fantastic challenge. But you see this tendency to, which is very traditional as well, that once things start getting challenging, there's always going to be a first cut on marketing, CRM and so on, right? I mean, if you look at the amount of events that have been canceled, pretty much all of them, right? Big campaigns canceled as well, right? Everybody just wants to sit still and see what's going to happen. And then I think it takes a lot of guts and perseverance and vision as well to do both at the same time. And this is also where the opportunity is and the challenge. So I see, the winners in these areas are the ones that are actually going to balance both. So I think, the retailers, the challenge for them is really to start organizing, share insights, and collaborate really on providing a more interesting, not just experience, but also, let's say, an offer, right? There's too much overlap currently on what's being offered in stores, especially when you look at, for instance, fashion, right? And multi-brand fashion, for instance, there's so much overlap. They also have a big challenge at the same time in their operations model, in their logistics, their whole supply chain, right? I mean, they need to start buying their winter and fall collections already earlier this year, and more, and that's going to be really challenging. So how do they cope with that right now, and how can they provide something that's going to be appealing and still going to sell right now? So that's the real challenge currently. I don't know whether it answers your question, but it is reality as we see it.
Yeah, and it's I think that goes towards answering the question in terms of how retailers are actually looking at meeting the future needs of the shoppers that are coming in there. What I'm looking at is more of, if we look at the experience of going in there shopping, so whether it's and I think this also ties into kind of the next question we have, looking at alternate business models, is so if you're shopping online, as Dan mentioned, and you buy something, and then you can go to the store to actually pick that up. And so there's kind of an immediacy of the shopping experience there, where you're not buying something and then waiting for it to come in the mail, and then deciding that you may or may not want it and then taking it back. You have a different experience in that you can buy it online. You can go into the retail outlet and actually potentially pick it up there, try it on there if there's ability to do that, and then decide whether you want to keep that purchase and take it home. Is that some area where you see potential in the future in terms of building out the retail experience?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think part of the same discussion is as well as looking at what kind of, what are the core operational processes that the retailers really excel in, and really try and take out those that are really inefficient, sorry about that, part of the operations that they need to focus on a daily basis, such as last mile delivery, such as managing packages every day, right? I mean, especially in the in our shopping centers, we know that pretty much every retailer has a desk, which requires a person for like half a day just to start managing packages. That's not a smart operation. I mean, we do know that the retail outlet is going to be part of that omnichannel experience, and should be actually, and balancing that out is going to be still a challenge, especially when you need to start looking into more collaboration. So, all those challenges at the same time require collaboration and require retailers to think about their position in that sort of that setup. What's going to be your role in that ecosystem, if you will, and that currently is the discussion that's going on, where we, for instance, as Wereldhave, are trying to partake as well, a specific role in facilitating new platforms on e-commerce, for instance. And on the second hand, interesting to look at also new possibilities and propositions and concepts in terms of providing those services, last mile logistics, for instance, communications being facilitated through platforms such as the one that Michelle is offering or might be offering in the near future. I think there's a huge opportunity to look into the whole, let's say, supply chain and value chain. We're going to see big shifts.
Yeah, cool. I guess, Dan?
Yeah, just something, just a small note. I mean, it's very easy to sound very apocalyptic when speaking about the change of retail. Okay, and speaking about e-commerce and the need for last mile, etc. That's true. But I mean, look outside of the window. We see endless buildings, commercial real estate. It's not going to vanish. It's definitely going to be repurposed. There's a need for new experience. Transactions in the physical world are here to stay. And the retailers that will succeed are the ones that will go forward with this evolution and actually see what makes more sense of that experience that you're describing. By the way, it could be that it would still be new products that we're not aware of yet. Mm-hmm. And, we're going back to the electronics and the things that for us, it's easy to consume online, but groceries, people still like grocery shopping and other retail elements, even if it's pumping gas, okay, which is part of the retail. So I think that the main focus of the retailers would be what are the products and how can we sell them in the physical world, and what additional services do we need to add with our infrastructures to make a good reasoning for people to come and have a good experience. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it will be as apocalyptic as we're drawing it out, that it will only be clicking away through retail.
And I sort of agree with Dan there as well. I think, if you think back a year or so, everyone was talking about showrooming, mm-hmm. and that never really happened. Did it? It didn't take over retail. Potentially it could now, in terms of 86% of online still requires a bricks and mortar store. So that tells us that people still expect to feel the brand, interact with the brand in a bricks and mortar way. So therefore, showrooming may be the one thing that actually does come to fore in that people still want to touch and feel the product, but they're quite happy to purchase it online. And as you say, come into the store and collect it. But I think retail in its purest sense has to change, in that you're not going to go out just for shopping anymore. Mm-hmm. You'll go out because you want to maybe buy something, maybe have something to eat, maybe look for services. You want to go out to one place and be able to do everything. You don't want to go from place to place to place, which is probably what we used to do. So the location in which retail is going to happen, in the way in that is going to be repurposed, is going to be really interesting as well. As Dan says, you're not going to look out the window and there's going to be no real estate. It's just, how is that real estate going to be used? And we're really looking at changes. And one of the most interesting things for me is that landlords are buying retailers in the US. And that's a huge move in a completely different direction, that they are going to, own the tenancies. Which is a bit like the Russian model, I suppose, of the way that they manage their shopping centres. So they're going to be the retail and they're going to be the landlord, and that's a really interesting move. But I also think that we've all talked about loyalty and we've all talked about data. How are we going to actually do that? How are we going to manage that process? There's a huge amount of data out there, but what are we using it for? And I think that is a big question that we have to answer in terms of digital transformation.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, especially with regard to the transformation. Is exactly what we see as well, right? I mean, the current mix is just not appealing anymore, and we really need to look at a better mix in terms of offer.
Yeah.
Cool. It's I think what you just mentioned there, Michelle, in terms of the amount of data that's out there and the uses of this data and how that can actually be turned into value for companies, whether it's looking at how they need to evolve their processes or evolve their business model, or how they need to better service the shoppers coming in. That brings up a very interesting question, which I think I want to give to Dan, being that you deal a lot with the data that you're gathering from the various shoppers and where they're coming from and what they're doing. What do you see as the role data privacy and the ethical use of data being collected will have in the development of future customer services and experiences?
So, I mean, Placense, one of our biggest capabilities is actually knowing how to take personal data, sterilizing it, and creating it out of it non-personal data. So we found a way to stick with the statistical information, but the statistical information that's based on a big enough panel. So I'll separate your question into two. Okay, the marketing side, and you spoke about omni-channel.
Yep.
For the omni-channel to properly work, people would need to be more tolerant with what they're allowing or the type of consents they're giving to use their information. Because if you want to be able to track someone who bought a piece online and then came to a shop and discussed that piece in the physical world, you need to be able to trace an individual. And that means that privacy is jeopardized. Now, either you're okay with it or not. The other side of privacy, and that's where we come to the picture, we believe that all these insights and decisions can be made without jeopardizing data privacy. Because it's not just about Derrek or Tim or Michelle or Dan, it's about the entire population. And most of these retailers would have a significant amount of people coming in and out. And then you need to create an understanding of the whole. Of course, the larger the statistical panel, the better you are. But definitely, there is an ability to make decisions on the future of retail without needing to touch the individuals and without anyone needing to jeopardize their privacy in any way.
I also think that what COVID has done, certainly here in the UK, is that you've opened up you're much more open to sharing who you are, where you are, and what you're doing. And that is massively changed here in the UK, where people are accepting to be tracked and traced. Because,
are they accepting, or do they have to be?
Well, it's not. You don't have to do it. This new app that you have to download, you don't have to download it, but a lot of people are, because they've seen it as a health issue rather than as giving up their privacy. And I think that will flow into other areas. If the NHS or the government are tracking you on everything that you do and wherever you go, then Google are doing it too, and Facebook are doing it too. So it doesn't really matter anymore. And that's just the UK I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So privacy is always about it. It matters when it gets into the wrong hands.
Absolutely.
Okay, and that's the biggest problem around privacy, and that's why we're guarding it and keeping it so tight, so it won't get into the wrong hands. But you're absolutely right. I think that if people, to a certain extent, I'm not sure if COVID will strengthen their need for privacy because they had enough of being tracked. And I don't want to get a text message anymore saying that I've been exposed to someone ill and that I need to go into quarantine. So that just may increase the impact of their understanding of how privacy can be jeopardized. So I think it could go either ways. And I think it's up to us as technology developers and providers to make sure that we find the right way to utilize this fragile information without jeopardizing anyone.
Yep.
Definitely. I see that we're almost out of time now, so I'm going to go through the panelists and ask for any final thoughts that you'd like to share with the audience. And I'll start with you, Michelle.
I think my final thought is that digital transformation needs to help and deliver advantages to all stakeholders, and be that the real estate owner, the manager, the customer, the local environment. If we're doing something, we need to make sure that it delivers positive attributes and outcomes for all those stakeholders.
Thank you. Tim, any final thoughts for the audience?
Yeah, I think that the how we go through this COVID situation and come out of it really depends on also our willingness to collaborate more, because we really need to, and think about what kind of insights and data and key skills and capabilities each has, and really can focus on and take part in that ecosystem to really thrive.
Perfect. Thank you. And Dan, any closing thoughts for us?
Yeah, so I totally agree with Michelle and Tim, and I think that it's hopping on that wave of this evolution and change, and making sure that everyone makes the relevant efforts to think outside of the box and to start educating ourselves with the new tools that are out there and the new data that is out there, and also what is data and how should we utilize it, and maybe also to try and bring into decision seats people that come from different data worlds that would implement what they've been doing in their data worlds, whether if it's fintech or anything else that's related to numbers and data, and actually bring them to help making better and faster decisions also to the real estate or the commercial real estate world.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, panelists, for sharing your thoughts on the future of retail. Thank you for everyone in the audience who joined us. We're going to close down now, and please join us back in around 10 minutes for the first keynote on the future of logistics. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a great day.